go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for joining. Really excited to have you with us today. We're here to talk about cloud managed wireless using the Cisco Meraki solution. My name is Emily. I'm on the product marketing team here at Meraki, and we have an action-packed agenda. It's deceptively short, but what we're going to do in this slide, is go through a very quick and high-level introduction for those of you who may be new to Cisco Meraki and our products. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the problems and challenges we see folks deploying wireless networks facing, and that will sort of tee up the live demo that we're going to do, which I want to spend the majority of our time in. We're going to look at our live production network here in San Francisco and walk through sort of some of the day-to-day activities and maybe things that you might be troubleshooting and show you what that would look like with a Meraki solution. And then we'll wrap up with a quick overview of our technology architecture and product families, and then time permitting, we will get to Q&A. And that reminds me, my good friend and colleague, Deanna, is here on the call today. She's here to help answer any and all questions that y'all might have. So if you do have a question, please type that into the Q&A box of your WebEx console. We're not going to be monitoring the chat box quite as much. It's also a little bit distracting when I'm presenting. But, you know, if it comes through that way, no worries. But if you can, please try to remember to type Q&A in that Q&A box, and Deanna will answer that in real time. All right, before we begin, we've got some exciting access points to give to those of you who are qualified IT professionals on today's call. Now, there are some terms and conditions. I would encourage you guys to check out that URL at the bottom of your screen. That's meraki.cisco.com/freeap. But this is an 11AC Wave 2 access point that we'll give you, and we'll throw in a 3-year cloud management license as well. So these will be fully operational. They're yours to keep and use as you see fit, and all of the features and functionality that we go over today in our demo will be available to you so that you can try it and test drive it in your own environment at home or at the office. So the way this is going to work is definitely go check out that URL that I mentioned before. What we'll do is we will contact you, I believe, within a week, and what we're going to do is confirm your shipping address. After we've confirmed your eligibility, we want to make sure that we send the access point to the right address. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and again, just keep an eye open for an email or, you know, if you get a phone call from us, please pick up so that we can confirm your shipping address to send out your free access point. So a little bit about us, for those of you who may not be familiar. Cisco Meraki, we actually used to be our own startup. We were founded way back in 2006 by a research team from MIT. And while at MIT, they were working on a project called the RoofNet project. So they were literally climbing on top of Cambridge apartment building rooftops, affixing wireless access points to them and trying to figure out how to manage those over the internet. And so way back when, you can say we invented cloud managed wireless networking, and that's how we got our start. And since then, we have branched out into an entire portfolio of cloud-managed IT products. These include Layer 2 and Layer 3 access and aggregation switches. This includes a full line of security appliances. It includes an enterprise mobility management solution for iOS, Android, Mac PCs. One of our newest product lines, I guess I should say, has been our MV line of security cameras and Meraki Insights as well. So all of these are products that are designed to be 100% cloud managed. And Cisco took note of this and acquired us back in 2012, and ever since then, we've continued to be one of, if not the fastest growing business units within Cisco, continuing to push the frontiers of innovation in the cloud management space. And you'll find us across an array of different verticals, everything from education to hospitality to healthcare, finance, retail, manufacturing, pretty much any vertical, and also across an array of different sized deployments. So everything from sort of SMB deployments to, you know, massive cross-continent type deployments of over 10,000 access points. So, you know, we can scale really, really large or work in very, very small deployments. It just sort of depends on the use case. So we're seeing a bunch of challenges today, particularly for folks who have to deploy wireless networks. And none of this is going to be headline news to you. You know, you guys probably run into this every day, day in and day out. But the challenges that we see are sometimes basic. It's just, you know, we want to get guest wireless up and running as quickly as possible. We want the wireless to be secure and isolated so folks basically just have internet-only access and can't mess up our wired LAN infrastructure or, you know, get into our network in any capacity. It may be something a little bit more complicated, like we want to glean actionable insights from the infrastructure we have in place using our wireless as sort of a mechanism for gaining insight into, say, foot traffic or behavioral patterns of client devices. You know, maybe it's something just, you know, as simple as wanting centralized visibility and control. It can be really tough if you're deploying a heterogeneous environment and let's say you have access points from one vendor, switches from another vendor, maybe your firewall or security appliance from a third. You've got multiple logins. You don't necessarily have that holistic end-to-end view of everything happening in your network in one single pane of glass, you know, sort of dashboard console view so that you can actually see what's happening. You know, of course, there's the day in and day out challenges of trying to identify the bandwidth abusers on your network, the folks using applications that you don't want to prioritize, you know, making sure that the applications that you do want to prioritize that are mission critical are actually given enough bandwidth. And then we're also seeing a lot of basically a growth in the sort of high density use case as more and more people have more and more mobile devices on their person, right, and showing up and wanting to connect all of these devices on wireless networks. We're seeing that you end up with a lot of client devices, often in a sort of concentrated geographic space. And, you know, typically the solutions to that is to add more and more access points to meet the capacity needs there. And then you end up in sort of a high density scenario where there are special use cases and special things that you want to be doing with your network that might be different if you were just trying to service sort of a coverage type use case. So I think the Meraki solution is one of the best ones to help solve any of these challenges. And what we're going to try to do in the demo is actually walk through and sort of highlight these. One other thing that I want to point out that's a really cool solution that is pretty new, actually, is our wireless health. And it's going to be a tool to really, really simplify troubleshooting. And what it's going to be able to do, and I'll demo it in the demo, but it's pretty awesome. It actually lets you answer some of the questions that you see on your screen around whether or not users are experiencing a good, you know, having a good wireless experience. You know, are there any access points that are truly overloaded that are sort of alerting that you may not have recognized? Had they not, you know, shown up on this graph? You know, maybe everything is sort of okay, but just about ready to sort of be overloaded, and you want to maybe go check it out and see what's going on. Or, you know, are people accessing the wireless network successfully? And in that sense, what we can do with this tool is actually look at all of the steps between when a client associates to an access point to when the client finally passes traffic on the network. Everything from you know, association to authentication to are they getting an IP address, and actually let you know at each step how successful in aggregate on your network those types of connections and requests are. So right away you can tell whether or not, you know, the problems on your network, is it because you've exhausted your IP address pool? Is it because there's some sort of authentication issue? Which access point is actually having the most problem? What client is actually experiencing the worst experience on your network? So this is an additional way to simplify the troubleshooting process, make it easier for harried and busied admins, especially if you're you know, dealing with a lot of devices and a lot of users. A quick and easy way to really pinpoint what the problem is. So what I want to do is stop talking about it and actually show you what we're talking about. So what I did prior to this session was I did what any of you could do if you were a customer of ours. I went to an internet accessible device, in this case my laptop, although it could have been a mobile phone, it could have been a tablet, and I basically went to dashboard.meraki.com, logged in with my username and credentials, and right away I am looking at the production network for Meraki. So this is everywhere in the world that we have Meraki gear deployed, and you can see our various offices here. Of course, San Francisco is the biggest one. And right away we're getting health and connectivity statistics about our networks. So this is both a big network and it's red. So that's interesting. We could dive down a little bit by clicking on these icons, and I could come down and actually see the exact building that I'm sitting in delivering this presentation, and hover over some of this to see what's going on, or I could expand this out if I had maybe tens or hundreds or thousands of networks that I wanted to oversee and manage. And I can do things like sort by usage, but very quickly get a sense for, have there been downtimes on these networks over the last week or so? Any significant sustained, red sections here would mean some significant downtime. I can see, of course, our San Francisco office is alerting, and I could scroll over and I could see, okay, out of about 400 devices, roughly 30 are offline. Maybe these are engineering devices, I don't know. But we could tag our networks in various ways, and then search by tag if we wanted to. Maybe we want to look at all the East Coast networks versus the West Coast networks, or I could just do a search by the name, which I'm going to do here. I mean, we see it, so I'll just dive into our San Francisco network. And once you dive into a network, what's really awesome is that you're going to be presented with a lot of immediate statistics and metrics around things like, overall number of client devices that have connected, bandwidth statistics, application usage statistics. And what you can do is you can start slicing and dicing this data by various time frames. So we could zoom out a little bit and look at the last week if we wanted to, and see that for the past week on our production network in our San Francisco office, we've had about 3,300 client devices, and here they all are. You can see them. You can see that some of them are wired devices, some of them are wireless devices, some of them are online now, some of them were online in the last week but are not currently associated. And the reason that we're seeing wired and wireless all together, even though this is a wireless webinar, we'll be focusing on the wireless, and the reason that they're popping up in this one view is that we run what we call a full stack. So we dog food all of our own gear and equipment. We're running our own switches and have our own security appliances, and use our own cameras and things like that. So they show up here. Now, perhaps what we want to do is actually just filter this view and maybe only look at our wireless clients. Or maybe what we want to do is actually only look at our wireless clients on a specific SSID. We could do that. Maybe just look at the folks connected to our Meraki Corp network. And maybe we want to just find the ones that are online now. Or perhaps we want to find the ones that are running the Mac operating system, or we want to find all of the Android devices that happen to also be Samsung devices. We could immediately find I guess it's 5 client devices that we're curious about, and we could go in and start applying policies to them if we wanted to. And we'll talk about this. But it's very easy to sort of dive in and look around and see what all is going on in this page vis-a-vis clients, vis-a-vis bandwidth, and vis-a-vis applications. Now, this ability for me to just type in, Android and Samsung and Mac OS and, are they online? This is a feature that's built in to the dashboard. It's innate. It's fundamental. We call it client device fingerprinting. You're never going to need to download some kind of updated file to ensure that you have the visibility into the latest operating systems or the latest client devices or the latest manufacturers. We're constantly keeping that list up to date for you behind the scenes. So as new operating systems or new devices come online, we will recognize those for you. And similarly, we have what we call application fingerprinting. So we can actually go through and figure out what is happening on your network vis-a-vis applications, and that's because we've algorithmically classified and tagged hundreds of applications, and we list them all out here. Of course, so it's very easy for you to expand this and maybe sort by usage and see right away, where is your bandwidth going. Again, this is for this particular network for the last week. We haven't filtered down at this point. I unselected the filter for wireless, but we could, of course, keep those filters on, and we can see exactly where our bandwidth is going. So, one common scenario that we all know about is, the network is slow. Something is going on. People are having trouble accessing legitimate applications because it's just sluggish. And so, what you could do is you could come in, you could immediately see if there's any anomalies, any spikes here in in usage. You could come in and say, well, you know what, we're a corporation, yeah, and we're pretty awesome and pretty low key, but man, there's a lot of YouTube happening here. So it's in our top 10 applications consumed in the last week. So maybe we want to explore this a little bit. And I could click into this YouTube link here, and I'll get a little bit more information about it. But I can see right away which client devices contributed most to YouTube consumption over the last week. And here are all of these devices. And some of these, it looks like maybe these are Spark boards or some kind of, I'm not totally sure what these are. But we can see that we do have some actual end user devices here. MVP is probably a MacBook Pro. I could try clicking into this guy, and we could go look at Steven's client device. And what you're going to see in a second, this is the sort of standard default view that you get with the Meraki wireless solution. It's pretty comprehensive. You're able to see immediately, based on colors, if the device is actually currently associated, and if so, to which SSID, which wireless network, will tell you which access point. And from here, it's trivial to just click into the access points config and status page, which we'll do in a second. So you can go in and actually see if the access point is healthy and looking okay. We can tell that there's no splash page configured for this Meraki Corp network, and we can see that the signal strength is pretty good. So he's probably sitting pretty close to an AP. Now we've uploaded our floor plans into dashboard, so we're able to actually, and we've carefully placed our access points here on the map. But you can see that this is actually 2.10 is actually the access point that he's connected to. It looks like he's pretty close. We'll get some information as well about the user and sort of the device capabilities, excuse me, as well as some metrics and statistics about this client device's usage, again, that we can slice and dice by a given time frame. So if I zoom out and look at this client device's consumption of bandwidth and applications for the last week, I can maybe come in and see, have there been any interesting patterns? And of course, remember, this was someone who used a lot of YouTube over the last week, and I can see it all here. It's roughly 23 gigs of YouTube. And if I wanted to expand this out, I could actually get a little bit more detail, again, sorting perhaps by usage. And I can see that in terms of active time on YouTube over the last week, this client spent 26 hours of active time on YouTube. Now, I'm not a full admin on our corporate network, so some of these destinations here are blurred out for privacy reasons, but you can see there's a lot of video happening. And if this were concerning to me, if this were causing problems or not something I wanted to condone, I could do anything from block the device and kick it off the network. I could apply a group policy to it, so maybe a no video policy, or perhaps I only care about applying a specific policy based on which wireless network this client device is connecting to. Maybe what I want to do is throttle video on our corporate network. Maybe this person should never be on our engineering network. And perhaps I don't care what happens on whatever this other network is, right? So I could do all of that. I could hit save, and that would immediately get deployed to that client device as a policy. Now, there's many different ways of getting policies to devices, right? You can go in and do what I just did, which is find a specific device and apply a policy. You can do what we were looking at earlier in the demo when I was saying, well, who's online and who's got a Samsung and who's running Android on that Samsung device, and we had 5 devices, and I could have selected them all there and applied a policy that way. I can apply a policy through Radius. If I'm using Radius authentication, that's another way. And depending on your Meraki setup, if you also have MX security appliances and things like that, we do integrate with Active Directory in various ways. So all of this is easy enough in terms of deploying policies en masse, which is really cool. Now, just to let you guys know, because you're looking at it, what's below this line here is sort of Systems Manager details, and Systems Manager is our enterprise mobility management solution for iOS, Androids, Macs, and PCs. And this is where, this is the product. It's software only. There's no hardware necessary for this product. You could just have Systems Manager if that's all you wanted. But with Systems Manager, it's basically enterprise mobility management. So this is where if you really want to granularly configure devices, like turn cameras on or off, or allow or disallow things like Siri, and you want to push applications to a device, and maintain different profile settings for devices that maybe perhaps dynamically get triggered based on certain security policies and things like that. Systems manager is what you're going to want to look for. And if you really want to get nitty-gritty, granular details into everything from, the current charge of the device and charging state of the device and how much hard drive space it has left, and you want to remotely lock or wipe or erase it, that's what Systems Manager is for. But from this view, everything above here is what you get just default from the wireless. And it's still pretty awesome because what you can do is you can come in and you can ensure, for example, if you get a troubleshooting call, this is another common use case, right, is someone calls in, maybe it's not that you're noticing your network is sluggish and slow and maybe YouTube's the problem. Maybe this is the other flip side of this coin, which is someone calls you specifically and says, I'm having a ton of trouble connecting to the network. What's my problem? So what you could do is then go find the device right here. So perhaps Stephen just called us and complained. I could do a couple of things right away. I can come in. I can make sure he's got the right IP address. He's on the right VLAN. I could ping his device remotely just to make sure it's receiving network traffic. And if all of this looks good and like pings look great and everything is showing up as green, maybe what I want to do is go in and actually start exploring on the access point side. Now there's some cool features here, one of which is topology, and you do need our switches for topology, but I'll open this in a separate tab and show you in a second. But topology is really, really awesome because it literally will dynamically create a map, basically, of all the wired connections in your network, and will show you which devices are alerting. So it's really easy to see, pinpoint if it's an upstream device causing problems or if there's a downstream device causing issues. And I'll show you that in a second. But what you can do, no matter what, with our access points is you can come in and you can say, all right, well, let's go look at the access point that this client is connected to. And there's so many different tools here for troubleshooting. So we'll talk about a couple of them. But no, this is just a very high-level overview. And if you have questions, definitely reach out to Deanna, and maybe I can demo something specific if you have a question there. But when we dive into the access point, what we're seeing is a couple things. First of all, health and connectivity status about the AP, right? It's green. Everything looks good. I can tell it's an MR52. It's showing me right here that it's also green. So far, it looks like if Stephen's having a problem, it's probably not the AP, but I can keep scrolling down and then get a little bit more information. So let's see what wireless networks are configured on the AP and what are actually broadcasting and on which channels. I can see some connectivity information for the AP, so it's IP address, it's DNS information. I can even see which switch on which port it's connected to upstream, and I can see that that switch looks okay. So far, the next step above, the immediate connection above, looks good. And I can see basically real-time traffic. I can see real-time clients. I could ping any one of these clients if I wanted to. I could actually sort by usage and see who are the biggest bandwidth consumers right now, literally in real time, on this access point. And I can come down and also look at historical data. So maybe what I want to do is look at this data for the last week, make sure that there were no reboots or slivers of red here indicating that the access point was having connectivity issues. And it looks like everything is good. No huge spikes in usage or sustained issues. And I can, again, sort by usage over the last week and see all of the devices that have ever connected to this AP and look at their usage. And, of course, I could dive into any single one of these client devices. And it looks like Stephen was actually one of the heaviest users of this AP. So maybe what I want to do is do a little bit more digging. I could go look at the event log just to make sure maybe if something were red and popping up, make sure the AP looks okay. I could come in and look at the tools available for me to run remotely on the access point, and every piece of Meraki equipment has what we call these live tools. These are these remote troubleshooting tools built right into the dashboard, and these tools will be different depending on the device that we're talking about. So a switch will have things somewhat similar, right? You'll be able to blink the LEDs and check throughput and stuff like that, but the switch will also have a cable test tool or, a port recycle tool. And here you can see these are all sort of pertinent to the APs. So we can, maybe ping the AP or test throughput or things like that. I could come to the RF analytics page and actually look at any radio on the AP either in real time or for a given time frame, and actually look at all the moments in time when specific AP events were happening. And what I can do is I can click on one of these events, and what it does is I can get a little bit more detail about it. So we can see maybe there were some performance issues on this AP at one point. But what's cool about this is, like, literally at the time this event was happening, I can make sure that there were not sort of an overabundance of active clients, that there wasn't a lot of interference happening on the network, and just make sure that usage wasn't maybe perhaps spiking in one direction or the other. So it's a neat way to then sort of drill down. And then, of course, want to look and see at wireless health, right? Because perhaps maybe there's something more systemic happening on my network. And so what I can do is I can come in and I can say, all right, if Steven's having some trouble, let me drill down. I know he's in the San Francisco office. Maybe, if his AP had turned up red, maybe what we want to do is drill down a little bit more and see what's going on. And what we can do is right away get a sense for which access points and which, I guess in this page, which access points are having the most problems in terms of things like latency or client connectivity. And of course, I could sort of drill down there. Where it gets really interesting is the connections page, because what I can do is I can come in and either for a given SSID or a given VLAN, come in and actually see all of the different steps, again, like I was mentioning before, between association all the way through successfully passing traffic. And I can come in and try to see, well, where are the issues? If perhaps we'd seen everything was looking good and then we had this huge fall off on DHCP, it could mean that we had the wrong address pool configured for our network and we just ran out of IP addresses. And so, from Steven's point of view, it looks like he's kind of on the network, except he doesn't have an IP, and that gets really problematic really quickly. We could scroll down a little bit more and see, again, which access point is having the most issues, and go explore in that access point, or even go look at the specific clients that might be having the most issues. And we can also go in and look at our latency by traffic type. So perhaps, if it's just voice traffic or just video traffic that Steven's having issues with, we can just come in and verify that there's no sort of slowdown or sluggishness there based on some thresholds that we've set. So this is still in beta. It's not generally available, but we do expect it to be out in the next couple of weeks for our customers, and it's going to show as a seamless wireless update, and really I think is going to help with troubleshooting. So I want to pivot and talk about a few of the other use cases that we mentioned at the beginning of this very, very quickly, and then we'll wrap up with some slides and hopefully some Q&A time, just to show you how easy it is to get up and running with a secure isolated guest network. First thing you would do is, and you're going to have to do this when you get your free access point anyways, you have to go in and configure your first wireless network. Now, we support 15 unique SSIDs on all of our APs. Of course, you would never turn them all on at once. The interference would be awful, but you might want to tag your APs and use some of our cool features like SSID availability and scheduling to have different wireless networks pop up in different geographic locations at different times on a schedule. So you may need that many SSIDs, or you may just want to have some in reserve that you can turn on and turn off when you need to. But what you would do is you'd go in, you would enable your SSID, your guest SSID, you'd name it whatever you want, and then what you're going to do is edit its settings. And what you're going to do is select the SSID in question. I'll just pretend Blizzard, for whatever reason, is going to be our guest network. And the first decision, really, that you have to make is how you want client devices to associate. By default, the setting is open, so anyone can associate to your network, but of course we do support things like pre-shared key, WPA2 Enterprise, if you want to integrate with Radius, if you want to prevent people except specific devices from joining your network, you can do MAC-based access control, that kind of stuff. The next decision is whether or not you want a splash page to pop up for this particular SSID. Again, the default is none, but maybe you want just a basic click-through with terms and conditions, or maybe you want to use the splash page functionality for additional types of authentication, right? Maybe you want to use Active Directory or Facebook or Google or something like that. You can use those to authenticate users to a wireless network. You can even prevent devices from joining a wireless network until they have enrolled in Systems Manager, again, our enterprise mobility management solution. So it can get pretty interesting with the splash page authentication functionality there. I'm going to leave it as the default setting here, which is none. And then what you next need to do is to get that secure isolated guest wireless is put your access point in. Again, I think the default mode is NAT mode, but if not, put the access point in what we call NAT mode. When you do this, the access points are able to issue isolated Class A IP addresses directly to client devices. So these are IP addresses that prevent clients from really seeing or interacting with or passing traffic with each other and seeing or passing traffic with your LAN unless you permit it with firewall rules, but they can get out to the internet. So this really locks it down into a secure isolated guest wireless solution at this point. And at this point, literally from a brand new SSID standpoint, I don't think you've had to click anything. All you have to do is really, there'd be a save button down here, and you'd click that, and you'd have a guest SSID broadcasting. Now, there's a few other interesting knobs and dials here to tweak, particularly if you're thinking about deploying guest wireless in sort of a higher density scenario. You can go in and set band steering if you want to nudge the faster devices to that 5 gigahertz radio, and if you want to maybe only have a 5 gigahertz radio on and turn off the 2.4, or if you want to go in and set minimum bit rates so that a legacy or slower device can't join the network and bottleneck the experience for everyone else, you can set that here. There's a bunch of other radio settings that you can set, everything from signal strength and decibel levels to channel selections to DFS settings to auto reduction in power, things like that. And we are going to be, it's on our blog, but we are going to be releasing, if we haven't already, a cool feature called RF Profiles. And RF Profiles will let you go in and create templates of these radio settings that you can then apply en masse to groups of access points. So if you have a whole auditorium or stadium full of one type of access point that you want to sort of deploy in a particular way with certain settings, that's great. And then you can get those up and running very quickly. And then if you have a different profile or template for perhaps an office setting, you can deploy that very quickly. And as part of the RF Profiles feature, we're going to actually introduce RX SOP. So for those of you that know, that's a way to really mitigate co-channel interference when you have a lot of access points in the same sort of tight geographic space. But I would encourage you to check out our blog post on that if you're interested. And the last thing I probably have time to show, because we're running out of time, is I want to talk about location analytics, because this is one of my favorite things. Location analytics, like the soon-to-be available wireless health feature, showed up in everybody's dashboard as a seamless firmware update. If you're unfamiliar with our model, the way this works is you buy Meraki hardware and you buy a license to operate that hardware. And the license includes kind of comprehensive, all you can eat. It includes all of your enterprise technical support. It includes access to all the features and functionality and dashboard that your AP supports, and includes access to all the new features and sort of security fixes and everything else that are going to get pushed down from us seamlessly and automatically as updates. Usually roughly every quarter we have something that we push out to you, and sometimes you wake up in the morning and you have really awesome features like location analytics or wireless health. And so what this is basically, we don't do per user, per feature licensing at all. This just shows up. It turns on for all access points. And what you can do is basically, as mobile devices pass by the vicinity of an access point, if those mobile devices have their wireless turned on, those devices are emitting probes out into the air looking for access points that they can join. And our APs can hear those probes, and it doesn't matter if the device actually connects to a wireless SSID. Doesn't matter if the device associates and authenticates. What we can do is we can actually algorithmically determine whether that device quickly passed by the access point, in which case it's a passerby, whether it lingered for a while in the vicinity of the access point, and again, it has to be pretty close, right? We were looking at certain levels of signal strength being met for a sustained period of time, but we would then say, well, this person visited in the vicinity of this access point, or we can actually tell whether or not the device connected to one of our SSIDs, in this case, perhaps Meraki Corp. Now, again, we're looking at our corporate office here in San Francisco. We're looking for the last month, and here are the statistics on sort of visitors and proximity and passersby. So, you know, if you were, say, a retailer and you had a storefront display, and maybe you changed up your storefront display and saw this like crazy spike here, perhaps that could indicate that you know, you had more people passing by, or you know, what you really want to see is the visitors line go up. But you know, it might help inform or give you a little bit more insight into whether or not your display is catching people's eyes and causing them to linger for a while. And once we've determined whether or not somebody's a visitor, we can actually figure out how long they visited, right? So what's their dwell time? You know, is it just a couple of minutes? Is it, you know, a couple hours? Is it more than 6 hours? It's no surprise here in an office environment that the majority of visitors are actually here all day. That's all of us coming in and working. But this is also useful information if you are perhaps, you know, managing a bar, or have a situation where you want to reduce queue times and lines that people are you know, queuing up for to speak perhaps to a representative of some kind. This kind of helps you understand how long people are in the vicinity, really in the vicinity of your access point at a close range. And then the final metric here on this page is loyalty, right? So the repeat rate. Are people coming daily? Is it their first time? Are they occasional? And of course, again, in an office environment, it's no surprise that most folks here are daily. Now this is great. This is just one location. Where this becomes incredibly powerful is if you have Meraki deployed across different locations and across different networks. Because what you can do is you could say, you know what, I'm going to use the Meraki San Francisco office. I want to benchmark it against all of our networks everywhere in the world that they're deployed, and see how it's doing benchmarks against the aggregate whole. I could, if I wanted to, look at the Meraki San Francisco office compared to a subset of networks. If we're using things like network tags, if I were to say select this and we tagged our networks, we could do that. Or we could get down into a specific network by network comparison. So maybe like, you know, if I want to compare San Francisco to our smaller London office, I could do that. Now when you're comparing network to network, where it gets even more powerful is that you can get down to the AP level. So you can tag your networks, East Coast networks, West Coast networks, that kind of thing. But you can also tag your access points. You can tag any device in Meraki, any piece of Meraki equipment, rather. And that helps with searching, and it helps in various other ways. Classic example might be if you were a hotel and you have a hotel restaurant in every hotel, every property, and you know, maybe you always put an access point right behind the bar. So what you can do is you can look and see, okay, well, you know, on Thursday nights, how many people are coming in and staying at least an hour at my bar and are coming in on a daily basis, you know, in San Francisco versus in London. And perhaps if you see an incredible spike difference in some of these metrics, you might want to go in and explore it and figure out, well, is London doing something better or something worse than San Francisco? So it's actually very, very powerful in that way. We also have a very rich partner ecosystem and a bunch of APIs that are available if you want to pull even more information from this and sort of configure your own apps to do various things with this data. The other piece of location analytics, and again, this is all free and just integrates with all of our MR access points, excuse me, is what we call the location heat map. So what we do here is we take some of the data from that location analytics platform, and we, you know, we'll use Google Maps by default. But again, if you've uploaded your floor plan views, this works really, really well. Let's see if we can pull it up. What you do is you place your access points on your floor plan map. And what we can actually do is we can select a day and we can select a time for ending, and maybe we'll just say we'll end perhaps at like, I don't know, 10 p.m. or 11, whatever this is, 10 p.m. at night. And you hit play, and you can actually go in and see our estimation of client density over time. So this might be a useful way for you to realize that maybe a lot of people are hanging out in a particular corner of your building that you weren't expecting, and you don't have an access point deployed there. Maybe you want to think about providing some wireless coverage in that space, or perhaps it'll show you what hours of the day you're busiest. But you can actually see these devices sort of as they move around in space and get a sense for what's happening over time. All right. Oh, I forgot to show you guys the topology view. This is what I pulled up here on this other tab. So this was the thing we were talking about before. It actually pre-selected for me Stephen's laptop, because Stephen was the person whose machine we were looking at earlier, and we went from Stephen's client view into clicking on topology, so it already automatically selected Stephen's MAC address. So let's collapse this down a little bit. So it's actually showing me, if we were troubleshooting Stephen, for example, we could look and see, you know, upstream, you know, make sure that things are green, which they are. So yeah, we could confirm very quickly that there's no device upstream of Stephen that might have been causing his, you know, hypothetical wireless issues. But you can see sometimes devices are alerting or perhaps offline, and this is a really quick and easy way to look at your entire network and very quickly drill down into the devices that might be causing trouble, and then clicking into those devices that way. And again, this is all dynamically built for you when you have our switches. It's our topology feature, so it's pretty cool. Okay, let me switch really quickly. We only have a few minutes left to present, and then we can wrap up. So hopefully that was interesting. That was just like the highest level, scratch the surface demo of some of the capabilities of our wireless, but hopefully gives you a sense for how easy it is to navigate the dashboard and move around and find information that you're looking for, and sort of gives you a sense for how much data is basically available within every page and all the different metrics and status type updates that we're collecting for you. So just to reiterate and refresh your memory, everything we make is designed to be 100% cloud managed. We do not do on-premise style wireless LAN controllers. We don't have PBXs. You know, we don't have NVRs for our security cameras. We don't have centralized servers for the enterprise mobility management. All of that has been moved up to the cloud. So it is easy, it's intuitive on your end. All you have is the edge equipment that you have to deploy locally in your space, and you're going to manage your gear from anywhere in the world that you have internet access, from any internet accessible device. And so a little bit of peeking behind the hood. The way this works is you plug in your Meraki equipment, right, into power and give it a connection to the internet. And then there are various ways of configuring Meraki gear. We have configuration templates available within the dashboard. Again, we have our dashboard APIs, one of our APIs that we provide. So, you know, I've heard of customers deploying thousands of sites in seconds, literally, because they've coded how they want every site to come up. You know, if there's like homogeneous sites like maybe retail chains or things like that, you could go in and manually configure your gear. And you can pre-configure everything before you've even plugged the gear into power, into the internet. Because what happens is once you purchase from us, we'll send you a specific code. When you go and you create your dashboard account, you'll input that code and it will populate your dashboard account with all of the devices that you've just bought. Now, of course, they won't be online yet because they haven't arrived. They're still being shipped to you, but you can actually go in and then create your networks, figure out where you want to deploy your gear, assign them into various networks, name them things, get it all set up on the dashboard side, and then once you plug in the equipment to power and internet, it will grab its configuration settings from the cloud and run with that. Now, I want to highlight that we have a very, very secure solution here. We use what we call an out-of-band control plane, so no end user traffic We don't see or store that. That goes wherever it was intended to go. What we are collecting, we have a secure connection from our gear back to our cloud, and that's a very small connection. It averages about 1 kilobit per second per device. It's secure. It's encrypted twice, first with proprietary encryption, but then again with SSL. And all we are collecting with that is the management and monitoring statistics that we need to present the information that you just saw in the dashboard demo. So things like the type of client device, the type of application consumption, maybe sort of like the operating system of the device and things like that. This connection will also be used to push out configuration changes and updates. So that's what that connection is for. Now our cloud, by cloud I mean our data centers that are hosted all over the world. They are secure. They are SSAE 16 certified. I think this formerly SAS 70 certified. They undergo daily penetration testing. They have a 99.99% uptime service level agreement with customers who built HIPAA and PCI compliant networks using our gear. Of course, our solution is sort of built upon this concept of seamless automatic firmware and feature updates, so your gear is always up to date. The security is already sort of dealt with on the back end, and if you have questions about the data centers and how secure they are, and sort of our security policies and some of our particularly like, how we are compliant with things like EU laws and privacy laws and things like that, I would encourage you to check out meraki.cisco.com/trust. We try to be as transparent as possible with all of that information and let you make a decision that's right for you. The only other thing that I'll say about this architecture, and it's sort of been hinted at, but I haven't called it out directly, is that the benefits here of being wholly cloud managed are amazing on many levels. So the ease of use, the ease of management, scalability is also very, very cool. We don't have the scalability bottlenecks that you'd find with the traditional solution, where you might be bottlenecked by the number of APs that can be supported by a wireless LAN controller, right? So it's very easy to get up and running. It's very easy to scale or shrink if need be with your needs. So again, in terms of massive scalability, we're not just an SMB solution, although we do work really, really well for many, many SMBs. We do have several accounts that are massive, on upwards of 10,000 devices on their networks. These are a few that have allowed us to publicly reference them and publicly reference their logos. So not to harp too much, but you can actually, if you want, I would actually encourage you guys to go to our website and check out, I think it's our case studies link or our customers link. We have a ton of different case studies sorted by vertical and use case and product, and I would highly encourage all of you, if you're really interested, to go in and read a few of those, because they're pretty cool. Now, I didn't want to put every model of every AP on here because it would have been a horrible slide. But all that I want you to take away from this is that we have pretty much an AP for every use case. We have indoor models, right, omnidirectional antennas, various shapes and sizes, and different numbers of antennas. And, I think all of them at this point now are 11AC Wave 2. We do have some new models that we introduced back in January that are indoor access points, but they take external antenna. So that's sort of like an antenna for every occasion. If you have specific scenarios, particularly high density scenarios, or you need to have targeted focused coverage down a hallway, or maybe you're dealing with really high 25-foot plus ceilings, we have antennas for you. We actually introduced 6 new antenna models for these new indoor APs. And of course we've got your normal dipole and bendable dipole and things like that, stubby dipole type antennas as well. But if you need sort of a very specific coverage pattern, I would definitely check our MR53E or 42E. And then we also have ruggedized outdoor models. These are the ones that are IP67 rated. Most of them also take external antenna, a different type of connector antenna, the N-type, than the indoor models, but they're there. They're IP67 rated for dust, moisture, vibration, heat, that kind of thing. Whether or not you're looking for very targeted, focused coverage externally, or you're just looking for basic coverage, we have models for that. So I would definitely check out our URL that you see at the bottom of your screen there. So you can check out all of our models. Excuse me. Oh, I guess these are the AP, the antennas. So for those indoor APs, that take external antennas. This is sort of what your options are for those. So, you know, if you have like a very dense auditorium or lecture hall environment or stadium, you might want to look at the narrow patch. If you're looking at sort of office space, you know, you might want to look at the A or the B series, that kind of thing. I'll just say that we've, again, only just barely scratched the surface of wireless and hardly scratched the surface of our full stack. If you're interested in anything else, not just wireless, I would encourage you to check out one of the introductory webinars for those products. You'll get something similar to what you saw here in that you'll get a demo and sort of a quick high-level overview of the product and what it can do. But again, once you have more than one piece of Meraki equipment from our various portfolios, excuse me, you'll start to see some additional benefits. It just becomes easier to do everything, right? If you've got you know, the wireless access points, we saw very briefly one hook in with our systems manager, enterprise mobility management, right, where you could automatically prevent devices from joining the wireless SSID until they'd enrolled in systems manager. So you can automatically lock down a wireless network to only devices that you can control at a granular level, for example. And there's various other hooks like that across our entire product portfolio. All right, so next steps. I would encourage everyone to check out our blog. We post a lot of information there, particularly about new products and launches and updates. So if you're curious about deep diving into the latest and greatest hardware or the latest and greatest features, including wireless health, including RF profiles, we have some recent blog posts there. The other cool thing that I'd recommend is if you're interested in kind of, you know, your curiosity has been piqued by this presentation, but you want to test drive some Meraki gear in your own environment, run us up against the competition, see what we can do, I would encourage you to take advantage of our risk-free evaluation. This is super easy. You call us, you tell us what gear you want, we will ship it to you, we'll pay the shipping to ship it to you, and then you have a couple weeks to test drive it in your own environment, and if you don't like it, we'll pay the shipping to bring it back. So there's literally no risk to you. It's so easy to set up, you won't be spending a ton of time or wasted time getting up and running with Meraki gear, I promise. So it's a really good, it's a good deal to check it out. And then if you really love the equipment and you want to purchase it and it's exactly in the configuration and deployment that you need, you don't have to send it back and then redeploy all over again. You just buy some licenses and it's yours. So it's quite nice. You can also check out our community. We launched this not too long ago, but we have a whole bunch of existing customers in our community. If you want sort of the straight dope on how we are and what we can do, I would ask some folks in there. We also have some Meraki folks that jump in every now and then to answer questions, so it can be a useful place to get answers for any specific questions that you have. All right, I think that wraps up the webinar. Let me pause this so that I can very quickly, I might have time to answer one question. Okay, so you guys, so it looks like Deanna has been very hard at work answering a ton of questions here, which is great. So Marlon is asking, is radius authentication available? The answer is yes. I think, Mary, if I'm understanding your question, can you have different ranges to one access point? If you're talking about sort of the RF coverage and can you set different decibel levels for strength of coverage, the answer is yes, you can. You can expand that out for sort of 100% power, or you can drill down the decibels down, I think, to 1 decibel level. Is there more than one license type? Not for MR, not currently. So you just buy an MR license, and again, it's all you can eat. We don't, for the MR, we're not breaking it down yet by, you know, or I don't know if we ever will, but we're not breaking it down by specific model. So you just buy a license, and what's great about that is, like, let's say you buy a 10-year license. You know, if 3 years in or 5 years in you want to upgrade your access points, well, you still have that 10-year license. So all you have to do is then remove those access points, buy some new ones, and just apply your existing licenses to those new access points. So that's very cool. Does the AP support Bluetooth? Most of our access points do. In fact, most of our access points are a quad radio architecture, so you'll have that 2.4 gigahertz radio, the 5 gigahertz radio, an integrated Bluetooth BLE radio, as well as a dedicated dual band radio that's dedicated just for scanning, for our auto RF channel management, our automatic algorithms to sort of ascertain the best signal strength and channel, as well as our air marshal feature, which is our rogue and security scanning radio. So, so all of that is built in. Clint, yes, it's 1 license per AP. What is the model of the free AP? The model is the MR33. And I didn't actually show the gamut of, or try to cram all of our APs on one slide. I would check out meraki.cisco.com and just follow the links up at the very top to go see all of the wireless access points that we have. Okay, I'm getting the hint that we need to go because we're at the top of the hour and there are more folks coming in to do webinars. So I apologize for wrapping up quickly, but I do hope this was useful to you. If you're curious, again, check out the communities and ask some questions, Meraki communities, or of course follow up with a Meraki rep who should be reaching out to confirm your shipping address to give you your free access point. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your day.